Bioscience is booming in the Phoenix area. The Valley is outpacing the nation in both bioscience and life science, with some of the highest growth rates of any market in the country. For more on the impact of the local bioscience boom, we welcome Chris Camacho, Greater Phoenix Economic Council. Always a pleasure. Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me.
When we talk about the bioscience sector, what makes up that sector?
Yeah, so traditionally this is everything from basic research that happens in universities to translational research that happens with docs and other scientists. It's all about discovering new gene therapies, new therapeutics, all about better patient care. At the end of the day, this is about supporting patient care.
So research and development, hospitals, these sorts of things.
Yeah, we're sitting here in downtown Phoenix, and right up the road here you have the Phoenix Bioscience Core, which 30 acres and roughly about 6 million square feet of just bioscience space is going to get built downtown here in Phoenix, really led by the most recent announcement with CAMI, the Center for Advanced Molecular Immunology, which is a mouthful, but it's all about detection of disease and naturally trying to address the future of disease prevention.
It sounds like a lot of the focus, at least in the past, had been cancer. Is that still a focus?
There's no question there's going to be a focus on cancer, and I've heard a number of scientists say that the road to solving cancer could happen through Phoenix. I think also right up the road with Barrows Neurological Institute and the tremendous work they're doing around the neurosciences. Imagine a future where nationally you're sending mom and dad here, or maybe dealing with an affliction that you have yourself, coming to Phoenix for that kind of neuroscience care.
Yeah, I think that the mayor of Phoenix likes to use that
right.
Road to cancer comes through Phoenix. With that idea, are there other? It seems like it could be general, but in bioscience there's a lot of targeted things. Is that still the way it is?
Well, I'd go all the way back to the early 2000s. Flynn Foundation established a roadmap, and a bioscience roadmap. Since that time, the state made major investments in TGen, the translational genomics infrastructure in our region. Now with CAMI and now with Mayo Clinic and what they're doing up in North Phoenix, this is about patient care, but it's also about solving and identifying drugs earlier and identifying prevention strategies to make us healthier as a society. But ultimately, the drugs, the therapies, we don't want to be just an importer. We want to be the market that creates these novel drugs and novel therapies to support our own patients here in the Valley.
And the information to keep these patients from, getting worse or even contacting the disease in the first place.
Yeah, when you look at the economics, as you talked about earlier, very, very significant for the nation. And yet, we're a place that, I think the last time I was here, we were talking about semiconductors. Now we're talking about biologics. We're talking about med devices. Tremendous amounts of growth that have happened just in the bioscience sector alone. We're a top 4 market in the entire United States for job growth in bio and life sciences.
Is there a symbiotic relationship between semiconductors and bioscience? I mean, is there an accelerator going on there between the two?
Well, there's a number of efforts underway because the linkage between the chips that are being produced, albeit with TSMC up in North Phoenix or with Intel, these kind of chips go into many of the med devices that many patients take advantage of today. One particular company called Dexcom out of San Diego advanced a major manufacturing center here in the Valley around glucose monitoring. Well, they have chips in that particular device, so there's a nexus between those chips and the medical devices that are on patients here in Metro Phoenix.
We've talked about the growth over the years, and we've done so many stories here on Arizona Horizon regarding bioscience and the growth. Was there a turning point? Was there a light bulb on, an aha moment where we went from, it's kind of dabbling, to a real player?
We've always had really strong patient care, Ted. So you think of some of the mainstays, the Mayo Clinic, Banner Health, Dignity, and many others. But I think what's very different in this era is we're seeing institutional and venture capital being placed in our high growth companies. And at the same time, the research infrastructure has dramatically changed. So you have Mayo and ASU, for example, launching a medical school up in North Phoenix. 120 acres of new biomedical lab space is going to be built up in North Phoenix.
Wow.
It's radically changed our identity.
The idea of special taxing districts, have they been in play as far as this expansion is concerned?
Well, these particular areas are being invested in by cities, heavy infrastructure, public-private partnerships. I think what the future holds is that this will be a place that continues to invest in novel ideas. I'll give you one example of this. The Wearable Technology Center up at the Phoenix Medical Corridor, which is the former Park Central Mall. So think of Phoenix of the 1970s, 80s. These malls are being rehabbed to become centers of bioscience discovery. around Creighton University and Barrows Neurological Institute, we have 27 companies launched in the last 3 years alone that are supporting drug discovery, med devices, and wearable technologies.
You referred to venture capital here a minute or so ago. Where does Phoenix rank as far as grants, venture capital, getting the money in here and getting things done?
Well, that's still a work in progress. So the mainstay coast, so you think of New York, Silicon Valley, Boston, San Diego, those are still by far the 4 largest hubs that collect a lot of the venture capital. We've seen dramatic change, though, in our position. So in the last 5 years, we've seen a 60% change in just the level of investment across software and healthcare sciences alone. So I anticipate further levels of investment coming this direction in the near future.
And last question here. I think people will, every time you hear about growth, every time you hear about anything increasing in the valley, the concern is water. Do we have enough water to sustain this kind of growth in this kind of industry?
Well, we could spend 45 more minutes talking about water in this state, but the challenge that you have, unfortunately, the national press loves to cover the Colorado River, and that's a third of our water allocation. We've been very good stewards of Arizona's water since our inception as a state. Today, we're using 1957 water consumption levels. And even these larger firms, whether it's a med device company or the semiconductor firms, many of them recycle 95% of their water. Intel, for example, uses no water when you look at the net effect of them cleaning their water and replacing wetlands. So those kind of investment strategies with cities and the state are going to lead us to a very strong future on water, and we have to continue to be very judicious about water use going forward.
All right, good information. Chris Camacho, GPEC on the bioscience, the booming bioscience sector. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it.